Hi everyone, I'm Lubomira and thank you for joining me. If you're visiting for the first time, welcome to my channel, and if you are returning, it's great to have you back. Here on my channel, I show you how I combine various card making techniques with elements made with the Cricut. I am super excited by today's video. It was inspired by a technique Jennifer McGuire featured some time ago using laminating pouches. If you haven't had the pleasure, I definitely recommend that video, and I'll of course link it in the description below. My technique is slightly different though. It adds ink to the laminating pouches in addition to the confetti and glitter. This video shows how I incorporate what I make with the Cricut in a card. If you're interested in the Cricut tutorial to how I made this particular element, you can find a link to that video in the description below. Now for the fun part. I love using alcohol inks because there is no wrong way of doing this. Just make sure when you are working with these inks, you're working in a well-ventilated area or with open windows. First thing I do is open my laminating pouch so it's laying open like a book. From there, I just start having fun and dropping in ink. No special skills whatsoever. I'm using Tim Holtz alcohol inks and blending solution. I use the colors Pool, Indigo, Eggplant, Raspberry, and a little bit of the metallic silver. There is, again, no special skills. All I do is I drop the colors in one by one and I let them blend. To get them moving, I either blow on the ink or add some alcohol solution. I even tried tilting the project, but that creates more of a runny look, which is also very pretty. But I wanted more of a cloudy, organic kind of moving shape. I did avoid the edges of my pouch to prevent a mess. And another great thing about this particular project is the pouches are fairly large, so you can definitely get several panels out of one pouch. After you apply the ink, set it aside to dry. I didn't move mine from where I was working because I didn't want the colors to run, but if you are going to be moving your project, make sure you have a sturdy panel or palette that you can actually pick it up so that the colors don't move on you. Now, the secret to this technique is making sure the ink is completely dry before you laminate it. Otherwise, you're going to have a mess and possibly break your laminator. If the ink is not dry, it will be pressed out from between your laminating sheet and the ink will get all over the inside of your laminator. So you want to avoid that. I'm going to add here that I have a cheap Scotch laminator. I've had it for years and I specifically use it for these kinds of experiments. I did not use my fancy laminator for this, just in case. Having said that though, everything worked out well and the panels came out beautifully, but you do have to make sure that the ink is completely dry. Before I go in and I place my pouch into the laminator, I did go back and I sprinkled some confetti, some stars and hexagons, and some very fine glitter. You want to make sure that whatever you want to use in your laminator, it is flat and not too bulky. Otherwise, it gets a very strange look, almost like air bubbles. After the panel is laminated, it has so much sparkle and it looks just magical. I can see this technique being used for underwater scenes or galaxies and sky. It's just so pretty. I love how the light passes through it and you have all those colors. After that is done, it's time to start assembling my card elements. I want a see-through panel in the front of my card, so I need to cut it into my card base to accommodate it. I do that by measuring an inch below the crease where my card base folds, and I cut straight across. I'm left over with the bottom panel. And again, I'm just going to need a portion of it, so I cut it down to an inch again. That leftover separate piece, I line up with the bottom of my back panel and hold it into place with washi tape. Now, when I look at my card base, I'm looking at a card that's missing a section right down the middle of it. Now it's time to put my laminated section into place. I have a lot of panel to choose from, so I take a minute just to plan where I want to cut it from. Once I do that, using my trimmer, I slice a piece about 3 inches tall by 5.5 inches wide. And don't worry, I'm definitely saving the rest of my panel for another project. Next, using strong double-sided tape, I put it along the bottom of that little flap and the top of my separate bottom piece. With the tape in place, I can press my laminated panel down. Now I have a completed card base to build on. With my laminate panel in place, I can work on the top portion of my card. I wanted to create a little texture in my skyline. To do that, I added some clouds made of vellum and solid cardstock. First, I measured and marked an inch across my scrap pieces of vellum and white cardstock. I do that because I want to cover the top flap of my card where I adhered the laminated panel to the base. The markings just indicate where I can place my cloud die. Since I want the vellum to be peeking out from underneath my solid cardstock, I need to lay my cloud die much lower on the vellum, while higher on my solid piece. The see-through quality of the vellum lets me position the dies easily. Once I have my placement, I can attach my dies using some washi tape and run them through my die cut machine off camera. After everything is cut, I simply glue the pieces into place using some tape runner, the vellum being the first layer and the solid clouds on top. There was a slight overhang of vellum, so I snipped that off using some scissors. Next, I moved on to the bottom section of my card, and like the top, I covered the part where the laminated panel and the card base met using another die. This time I used the Forest Border die by Lawn Fawn. And like the top, I just made a note of where I needed to cut so that the die covered the seams. Now, I don't show this in the video, but I actually used some spray adhesive to put the lower piece into place. And I did this because it was easier to make sure all those intricate trees got coated with glue. I could have used liquid glue as well though. I worked on my sentiment next, and I took several of small words from the Winter Sky stamp set, also by Lawn Fawn, and pieced them together to create the phrase, "Wishing you a magical Christmas." I used my mini Misty to arrange the letters, using the grid on the front panel to make sure that my words were straight. I took a piece of basil cardstock in the color Polypoo and heat embossed the sentiment using Versamark ink and silver embossing powder from Ranger. It's always so satisfying to watch embossing powder melt. Having my sentiment banner, I worked on my decorative word die next, the one that we made with the Cricut. I had my Cricut cut out 3 layers of white cardstock and 1 silver glitter layer. I went ahead and glued the 3 white layers on top of each other and then the silver. I'm not going to lie, sometimes the more intricate fonts can be a little tricky to align, but it is doable. The trick is not to get your hands too sticky in the process and to use tweezers to get into those hard to reach spots. At that point, I wasn't sure what to do next, so you see me just looking at how the banner would fit with the Believe. I decided to add a little critter and at the same time draw attention to the sky. The Winter Sky stamp set again was perfect for this. Off camera, I stamped my little flying Santa and the little polar bear in Simon Says black ink. I placed the Santa in the sky using foam squares, and then I simply colored the polar bear using Copics and added stripes to his scarf using a white gel pen before I placed him next to the banner. For details on the colors I used, please check the description below. And that's that for this card. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed yourself, remember to like my video, and if you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time. Bye!